is not disconnected from what we're seeing with immigration on the streets. It actually supercharges ICE's activities in terrorizing local communities, in kidnapping and disappearing and deporting immigrants across this country. Right now, for ICE detention, we spend about $3.5 billion. The Big Bad Betrayal Bill increases that number to $45 billion. $45 billion from $3.5 billion. So across the board, and then there's separate money for ICE agents, for any number of pieces of the transportation, the deportation, all of that. So it is really essentially saying, if whatever you see right now, Joy, multiply that by 10 to 12 times. That's what we're going to start seeing in terms of ICE agents terrorizing, disappearing, kidnapping immigrants, deporting them to third countries, holding them in incarceration facilities. These are jails now. These are not really civil detention centers, which is what they're supposed to be.
I mean, concentration camps is what I call them. We just looked at that alligator one in Florida. Well, that looks exactly like CCOT. It's an American version of CCOT. You've been doing these field hearings specifically on this issue of immigration and this attack on non-white migrants. And I will note that there's a new New York Times piece that says that Donald Trump has, quote unquote, joked that Stephen Miller, if he had his way, would reduce the population of this country by 2/3 to 100 million people, and they would all look like Stephen Miller. Wow. So I think he's saying something quite clear. That means that Stephen Miller is even further white nationalist than Donald Trump. Yeah. What have you learned in these field hearings?
Well, we've done 2 so far. It's a series that I'm hosting as the top Democrat on the immigration subcommittee to be really proactive. They won't do the hearings in the official capacity, so we're doing them as shadow hearings. They're called Kidnapped and Disappeared. The first one was about the Trump administration's deporting of immigrants to third countries, at that time against all court orders, without any due process. This is, how folks ended up. They were on their way to South Sudan. They ended up in Djibouti in metal shipping containers, no due process at all. The stories are stunning. I mean, the ways in which the Trump administration is getting around the provision of due process, both in that situation, in the second one, we talked about court hearings. And these are stories that are coming out where people are going to their legitimate appointments, right? Their legal appointments for citizenship, for asylum. They have to go to those. If they don't go to them, they are considered absconders. They're considered to have violated immigration law. So they're going to those appointments, those court hearings, and in some cases have been preparing and waiting for months and for years. And when they get there, they are either being arrested immediately, or the government is dismissing their case, because if the government dismisses their case, they can now put them into expedited removal, which is a form of deportation proceedings that allows you very minimal due process. So it is really an attack on every part of the legal immigration system that we can find. And you mentioned what Donald Trump had just said. They're also now talking about denaturalizing. And just yesterday,